Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts, Hare and Forbes Machinery House, and Pace Farm.
G'day and welcome to today's show. It's time for more trucking flashbacks, so why not put on the jakes, pull up a chair and enjoy a trip down memory lane on this week's Classic Restos. There's one guy that's been supporting Classic Restos now for a long time. Of course, he loves his classic trucks and he's an absolute gentleman. Here's Frank Pace with some of his private collection. 1979. We were in an era where trucks were big.
Well, this truck is exceptionally big. I mean, even today, when you see this truck on the road, it looks like the big ones, right? It hasn't got the horsepower, it hasn't got the mod cons, but she's a big truck.
Back in the day, though, a Transtar, I mean, if you drove a Transtar, you were doing well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and they've done a lot of work and they've got a good reputation through the trucking industry.
What's the history of this particular truck, Frank? What part of New South Wales or Australia did it do most of its work in?
Well, it worked up in the Territory. It pulled a road train. Wow. Then after that, it went to Glenrowan in Victoria. I bought it off the people down there. And then after that, well, since I've had it, she's had a relatively easy life. We've restored it. We haven't gone through repainting or anything. It's pretty well in its condition she was in.
Isn't it amazing, like, the old girl, pulled a road train. I mean, we just don't appreciate the amount of work that these vehicles have done. And not only that, the guys behind the wheel, I mean, back in an era too where the laws were different, they had massive hours behind the wheel. I mean, it was a hard industry, wasn't it?
I'm glad where we are today, where we're at. All right. I mean, they did it tough and they did respect their vehicles. Yeah. But
I still find it hard to absorb or comprehend how guys back in the day, and I know people watching the show, you've probably done this, where you would have a full 8 or 9 hour day driving around a metropolitan area picking up your deliveries, and then at 7 o'clock that night head to Melbourne or head to Brisbane and then drive all through the night. I mean, it's a good thing those days are finished.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
I got a lot of time for the International, the old AACO. I mean, from the 510As with their petrol motor V8s right through to the 3070s. They used to run the 903s. They were a good old truck, weren't they?
Yes, certainly was. AACOs have been around, and I think they're only made in Australia. Like internationally, you don't see an AACO anywhere else. In America, they don't have AACOs. But no, we've had a good run out of AACOs. This particular one, this truck, I bought it, it used to cart CIG gas. And it was about probably 3 or 4 years old when I bought it. And then I put a reefer on it. And it carted eggs around Sydney for a long time, about probably 12 years. Yeah. And then when I retired at that, I decided to do her up a little bit, and we put a tilt tray on it. And now she just moves stuff around from farm to farm, and she takes trucks to shows, and it's a lovely old tractor. I've been to Dubbo, it's been to a lot of the truck shows. We've been South Australia, Queensland. My wife and I just get in it and drive.
Yeah. Isn't that great? I mean, these vehicles were never designed once upon a time and put to work with the intention of down the track becoming showpieces. I mean, it's just so nice to see them in early retirement or full retirement in some cases.
Absolutely, like the AACO, because it was so popular. We drive along and it turns heads and we pull up and somebody will come up to me all the time, how's the AACO going? I could have, I think a really nice truck on the back, and they come and comment about the AACO.
When we talk trucks, AR160, 1953. Now, this means a lot to you, this one, doesn't it, Frank?
It does. This is basically where I learned to drive on an AR160, and my job was to take veggies into the market from the Greystanes area into the Haymarket in Sydney. And that was that's what I love to do. And I learned to drive, I learned just to put them together. Yep. They got a little ABD 240 motor in it. It's got a 4-speed, 2-speed diff. Just a good old truck.
Tell me, Frank, what did a day entail then, back in those times? What time did you get up of a morning and how long did your day go for?
Well, we used to get up round about between 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, depending on whether it's summertime or wintertime. In the summertime, we'd get up early, in the wintertime, maybe a little bit later. Before that, because there weren't cool rooms around, we used to go, all the produce was cut late in the afternoon because they couldn't cut it in the sun. So they'd have to wait till the sun went down and then they'd cut their lettuce or whatever it was. So we couldn't go and pick it up till it was dark. So we'd be out there loading the truck till 10, 11 o'clock at night and then take off to the market at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock. We'd unload there, get it all ready. If the product was good and the market was short, we would be able to sell it pretty quickly. But most of the time, typical thing in Australia, we grow more than we can eat. So we would have to bring, if we didn't sell it, you'd unload it, and then sometimes you'd bring it back. But then when we got back, we'd have a bit of a snooze we'd get up by about lunchtime, sleep a couple of hours, and then you'd go out because you had to take the empty boxes to fill up the vegetables. And so we'd take and deliver them so that the guys could cut the stuff and fill them up.
And these were the very trucks that were the integral part of this. These were the backbone, weren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, if you went down the market, there were International, Chevs, Fords and Dodges. And that was it. And there was no AACOs. There was no... If you've seen a big truck, occasionally you've seen a Diamond T or a Federal or, the 190s that were just out too, and that was a big truck. But basically, 160s, 180s, that's all it was.
Well, talking about our AACOs, this is where it all began, back in the early 60s. The ButterBox, I believe these were referred to.
Yes, a very uncomfortable truck to look at. They were, they had no class at all, actually, as far as cosmetics concerned. But very, very strong and did a great job. The
guys did interstate in these as well?
Unbelievably so, yes. Yeah. Bit difficult to get in and out, but once you sat in the truck, it was quite comfortable.
You get a bit of a surprise if you didn't keep an eye out on that handbrake lever there, Frank.
Absolutely. The amount of times you got a thrill from that was unbelievable.
Be kind of thinking what part of Sydney I was in.
The handbrake wasn't positioned in a very comfortable place. But no,
they didn't think of ergonomics back in those times, did they?
No, they were just trying to get the proper weight over the axles and how the truck could carry a better load, and I think it was all in the early developing days to make things better.
So 5-speed box and splitter, a 2-speed diff?
2-speed diff, 5-speed, petrol engine, 180. Went for a long time. Straight 6 petrol motor. They did a lot of work.
Funny, isn't it? We look at our classic cars, and I often bang on about the stainless steel and the bright work and how they used to encapsulate their car with detail back in those times. You look at this early International, even the badge across the top there of the radiator support plenum there. It looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, that was quite classy to have a bit of chrome on them.
1948 International. What a glamorous old girl this is. Look, we talk of bright work. It looks beautiful.
Well, at least you've got to remember that the K-Series came out during the war days, and the K-Series didn't have no chrome at all on them. They were all basically ordered through the Army, and then, of course, when the war finished, they started to smarten them up a bit. So the first thing they did is put a bit of chrome around the old K-Series, and they brought it out as a KB. And then in that series we had the K7, which was replaced by the 190s, basically, right? And once again, used them on interstate. They went up and down the highway. They weren't very famous for having brakes, but they had power. They were slow, but reliable. Yeah.
Any of these trucks, when you go for a drive, there must be so many people that do make comment to you. I imagine if you pull up in this somewhere, you'd be almost swamped.
Absolutely. Doesn't matter where we go. If we pull up somewhere, people always got a good thing to say about the old trucks. Yeah. It's, I think the nostalgia of the old days, and people, especially older codgers like me, they look at it and they remember when they were going and they say, gee, the old girl's looking all right.
Well, mate, the industry wouldn't be where it is today, mate, if it wasn't for the front runners such as yourself and people before you as well. It goes way back, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I didn't drive long distances. I just drove locally, but I always had a passion for the trucks. Yeah.
We've always had a few cars. They're all special. The T-Bird.
Oh, that's mine.
The Combi for when we want to get away. The XR8.
It's going to be a classic.
They're all insured with Shannons,
We've also got Shannons Home and Contents cover,
which helps protect our automotive collectibles, tools and memorabilia in the home and garage. If you're motoring enthusiasts like us, it's got to be
Shannons.
Shannons, Insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
If you have a restoration project, Hare and Forbes has the tools that you need. Shrinker stretchers, dollies, mallets, bead rollers, profile gauges, professional panel restoration kits, and so much more. Now I warn you, enter at your own risk because you will end up buying something. So come along to your Cap City store or browse and buy online at machineryhouse.com.au because Hare and Forbes has the range. Out of sheer respect for the drivers that pioneered interstate in this country, an event called Hauling the Hume was created. And to tell us more, here is Bruce Gunter.
So the idea for Hauling the Hume came along when my father, who is an old interstate truck driver, used to constantly talk about the old Hume Highway, and he did a lot of miles down there through the 50s. We had a fellow by the name of Ron Kirk, and Kirky's quite well known in the old hobby. He's an old Cummins mechanic, and he was right up on it. And I also spoke with Brad Dwyer, who was the president of the Western Sydney Historical Truck Club that I was in, and said, look, can we get a bit of a hand here to do this? And then we said, oh, we should advertise this, and we might, get a little bit of interest and get a bit of money in the club and all of that sort of thing, because it was a new club, and the clubs normally aren't all that profitable. And lo and behold, we had 143 trucks come on that first run, which blew us away, and it snowballed from there. So the old road, to me, to be totally honest, never really meant anything to me. It was always something that Dad talked about. I was not an interstate runner. I only ever drove trucks locally around Sydney. Dad was the one who always talked about it, but I had a huge fascination with road transport from when I was a little kid and loved trucks. Absolutely lived and breathed them. All my mates who I went to school with, if any of them are watching this series here, will be taking the mickey out of me saying, yeah, we remember when he used to run around the school pretending he was a truck. And I'm nearly 50 years of age and I still cop it. But anyway, to me, it wasn't anything until we held that first Hauling the Hume. And the amount of old truckies who come up, because we had a dinner down in Yass. Yass was like the end of the old Hume Highway where it was continuous. So we decided that we could get accommodation at Yass. Yass would be a good point. It was all very, why don't we just go here and why don't we just do that? It was very laid back. But the amount of men who came along to the dinner that we held, and you'd be amazed how many people came up to me, older guys, my dad's age, with tears running down their cheeks saying, thank you so much for acknowledging what we did, and words to that effect. And I was quite touched. And I remember coming home and ringing up a mate of mine a few days later who, power of social media, and he just said to me, golly, that run really went off well, and I was telling you some things about it, and I think that I was very overwhelmed and I broke down. And I've got a huge respect for the older generation and what they've done, and whether it was the soldiers from back in the World War I and II era and what they've done for us, the people that did the hard yards. I look at my mum and dad and what they've done in the past with they're still in their original home, but everything they did by hand. We're in a throwaway society nowadays. The trucks nowadays are automated. They're big, but they've got a lot of horsepower. Where Dad was running around in a truck that was a 7-tonner that normally had 12 and 13 tonne on, they didn't have the reliability. He had a map that he would open out. A lot of the roads were dirt, and he'd open his map out and work out where he had to go, and he was 19 when he first took off. And he was old compared to some of the other guys that first got into driving trucks. So I look at that generation in awe. And from when I was a kid, and I was born in 1970, and through the 70s when I really started getting interested in big trucks and was always looking at them, my dad always had me under his wing and was showing me and pointing out everything and telling me things. And I think they're my earliest childhood memories and probably the only things that I remember. The old road to me now means an awful lot because of what it means to everyone else. It took a while for me to understand just how important that was to that generation of truckies from back in the day. And I'm thrilled that with running Hauling the Hume, it's one of the real driving forces for me now. There's a couple of driving forces, and one of them is acknowledging the old guys and what they've done. There's some lovely people that I've met on that run who aren't with us anymore, and we made some really good friends, and they're gone now, and life's short. It's not a practice run, as one of our good mates says, and I truly believe that we need to make the most of all the time that we're here, and as long as I can keep doing this and putting a smile on the faces of a lot of these older blokes, I'll keep doing it. And we've got it running quite well, and I've got a great team of guys who help me now. And there's a few guys that have moved on, and I've purposely actually said to them, look, you guys can take a back seat now because they're older guys and they love being part of it. But we've got some younger guys in because one day I want to be able to hand this over. But at the moment we've got some good guys, and we've had some great guys that have all been part of this, and it's a tribute to everyone. I do a majority of it because I'm not a control freak, but I'm pedantic, and I've realised that whatever happens comes back on me. So I've just got to make sure that it's right, especially with the dealings with the authorities. But that 20% that I don't do, if I don't have those guys helping me, it'd be a disaster. So I owe a lot of people for this. It's my face is out there, but it's not all about me, and it's not all me. It just doesn't work without the people around you. So we've been able to sit on about 300 vehicles coming on it, and you just think we've got 340 odd kilometre run, and we've got 300 commercial vehicles on it. Nowadays, because we've got a 30-year cut-off, which goes in line with our historic registration, but we're getting a lot more Kenworths and Max and semi-trailers, so we're getting a lot of bigger vehicles come on it, and not as many 50s and 60s Diamond T's and Internationals and B-model Max and what have you. They're still there, but there's a greater majority of big gear, so that affects the venues that we get to. It's always something different, but we love a challenge.
I spend a lot of time out here. The RT Charger's the real deal. An E49. Remember A-Charger? I've always got projects on the go, so Shannon's laid-up cover helps protect my restorations. I'm Mopar through and through. It's a passion Shannon's understands. I wouldn't insure my cars and bikes with anyone else.
Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
If you own a classic bike, a classic car or a classic truck, make sure that it's insured with the best, and that is Shannons. Why not pick up the phone and give Shannons a call for a quote and a chat on 134646. And if you're enjoying classic Restos, as I know you are, keep in mind there are over 315 episodes awaiting you on the Shannons Club, with a whole heap of other cool stuff there as well. For more information, visit shannons.com.au. Hare & Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare & Forbes has the range. The National Road Transport Museum Hall of Fame in Alice Springs. They do their bit too, acknowledging the profession of many drivers past and present. It's a credit to Liz Martin and her team. Well, you may be asking why out here in Alice Springs. The first thing that belts you around the head when you arrive is the atmosphere. Hot, hard and tough. Things don't get much tougher on transport anywhere in the world than here in outback Australia. The concept was born out of a concern that most trucks from yesteryear were rusting away on rural properties and cattle stations. And it's the old story, restore them or preserve them. What better place? A public meeting was called in 1992 with the Road Transport Historical Society, and a motivated group of volunteers began collecting vehicles, photos and memorabilia. Just 3 years later, on July 31st, 1995, the National Road Transport Hall of Fame was officially opened. The concept for the museum is unique to most other road transport memorials throughout the world in that it has taken a lateral approach to the restoration of vehicles. You won't find rows of pristine off-the-production line trucks here. The policy is to show vehicles as they were in their working lives, including the crude modifications and adaptations that bush mechanics and engineers had to undertake to ensure they could perform in Australia's harsh working environment. These vehicles are testimony to the trials and tribulations of our road transport industry's pioneers, essentially Australia's unsung heroes. The charter is to cover all forms of transport, from the camel strings of old through to today's modern road trains and stretchliner coaches. The aim is to be truly representative of Australia's road transport industry, covering all sectors of industry and all areas of Australia. And one look around here, it's easy to see why Kenworth is up there with the world's best in trucks. The Kenworth Dealer Hall of Fame comprises around 11,000 square feet of display space devoted to the history of the Australian-designed and built Kenworth, and the dealer network that brings this product also provides backup support to customers across Australia. This glorious Kenworth here behind me is a K125R, or known to the diehards as the Grey Ghost. This was in fact the first Kenworth that was designed and manufactured here in Australia. This was Kenworth chassis 400008 and was originally built in March 1971 for All Trans Limited, the Comet division, to conduct parcel delivery operations on the eastern seaboard of Australia. The truck recently resurfaced after working for 30 years since its manufacture. The cabin was refurbished and painted in the original German silver racing colour. Once the chassis was finished, a van body was purchased that is similar to the original van used by Comet when the vehicle was brand new. The K125R featured an N60 Detroit with a Jacobs brake, Fuller transmission, Rockwell suspension, and rode on Kenworth torsion bars. What a true mark of respect. Well, I know one thing, you can rest easy, big girl, because your hard days are done. Alice Springs has long been a transport hub for one of the most remote regions in the world. Probably because it's over 2,000 kilometres from the sea or other major population centres in any direction. From the early days of camel trains right through to recent times, goods have been transshipped through Alice Springs on their way to or from the northern port of Darwin or far-flung settlements throughout the sparsely populated Northern Territory, outback Queensland and Western Australia. It has a special place in Australian road transport industry as the birthplace of the road train and for the unique challenges of vast distances in the toughest conditions on the continent. Have a look at this pile of junk here. A man bought this once, brand new. Imagine how he felt when he drove it away from the dealership. A man went to work every day in this truck and probably paid his house off with it, put a couple of kids through school, and at least paid itself off. And today, here it sits at the Road Transport Hall of Fame Museum here in Alice Springs. I don't think anything here should be looked upon as junk, but more so vehicles of pride from owners a long time ago. Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this week's episode of Classic Restos as I bring you some more classic truck flashbacks. And of course, it's a big thanks to Lions Transport here in Mittagong, New South Wales, for me to use their yard and their trucks as the backdrops. As I say at the end of every episode, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, until next week, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au.
Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts, Hare and Forbes Machinery House, and Pace Farm.